This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. The Choice Breakdown mandate. Get it on and welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. It's Mark Garrigus in New York City.
I'm in New York City, mid-preliminary hearing in L.A. as we speak. So that's why I think I've dressed up. Don't think I was just doing this because you're wearing the beanie and I need to class up the act. But by the way, can we just talk at the outset? Let's take a couple of victory laps. Have you noticed, Adam, I don't want to say pushback. I don't want to say angst. I don't want to say people who can't quite handle the truth, a la Jack Nicholson. But when the CDC came out, I think repeatedly said this week that there is no evidence whatsoever of outdoor transmission of COVID. And when you, what did you tweet? Something like, who could have seen this or something like that?
Yes, who could have seen this coming?
You see some of the ridiculous comments from people. I thought we were following the science. Why did they then have to call you a 75-year-old?
I don't know. Look, here's the thing. People hate shame. What I've learned is you can call a woman a bitch or an a-hole or whatever. You call her a bad mom, she'll go ape shit on you, especially if she is a bad mom. Shame fucks with people. And when these people, these sheeple, followed these people and they were wrong, they can live with it because we're living in a new world order where everyone just sort of wills themselves right, sort of post, after the incident, they somehow build a time machine and they
it's not only a time machine, it's almost like there's a complete repression. I mean, do you remember, how about for the last 2 months, I've been listening and watching the idiot squad on Twitter talk about Tin Horn Flats and the outdoors and, you're the reason that, ever since it's been shut down, the COVID rates have fallen in California. You really wonder what the future of America is with the frontal cortex of the people who cannot see what has happened over the last 14 months. It's astonishing to me.
Well, I believe it's my job as a citizen, as a father, as an American, and as a lover to point out to these people how fucking wrong they've been for the last year and a half. Not because I'm taking a victory lap, although that's part of it.
Trust me, I'm doing the victory lap because I have been arguing in court papers. By the way, any of you who are doing your little Twitter feeds, I have been saying it since filing it since November. The Court of Appeals got it dead wrong. We're now in front of the California Supreme Court. This was all a freaking ruse. We've said it all along. They finally admitted it now. And yes, I'm going to take a victory lap. And by the way, California Supreme Court, why don't you take the case and why don't you reverse the Court of Appeal? Because they got sucked into this nonsense as well.
Well, half the lap is for victory, and then the other half is the next time one of these things comes down the pike and you idiots want to all jump in line and follow what the government is telling you what to do, maybe you'll hesitate. Maybe you'll pause. Maybe you can look back at this experience as a teachable experience and not fucking fall in line like the lemmings you were this time around. Now, as long as you deny what you did this time around in your weakness, well, then you're bound to do it again because you're doing too much externalizing. Do some internalizing. You got scared. You're a coward. You turned into sheep, and now you're ashamed of it. Good. Eat it. Own it. Digest it. Let's not let this happen again.
Exactly. And by the way, we are in such constitutionally shaky ground for everybody, and I'm one of them, who thinks January 6th was an assault on democracy and the Constitution. Then how do you say that and you have that in your brain, and at the same time say that the complete suspension of constitutional protections due to these phony COVID emergencies. And when I'm talking phony emergencies, I'm not saying COVID is phony. What I'm saying is this idea where they suspend the Constitution under the guise of emergency powers given to the executive, which we now see demonstrably was a ruse, a complete ruse.
Well, that brings us to something that I was thinking about, which is Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, said he's going to pardon anybody who is in violation of any COVID rules. And he was speaking specifically, I think, to male-female gym owners. Oh, the gym owners. These people try to open their gym. Ironically, all right, so we'll play the tape in a second, but here's an ironic thought. The ironic thought is the small business owners, like the gym owners, are trying to keep their businesses open in a safe fashion during COVID so that people can work out, so that they can stay healthy, which we've now found out is the best way to avoid the symptoms of COVID or being ravaged by COVID.
And God forbid, do not cite the statistic that obesity is 80% correlated to hospital stays due to COVID.
All right.
Don't ever mention that, because then that's a bad fact.
That's what the private sector is doing. Now, what the government is doing is de Blasio's handing out Steak Shack fries and cheeseburgers to anyone who gets vaccinated. So just take a look at those two particular actions in a bubble and think, who's going to be on the right side of history here? But I'll play you the clip. It was DeSantis talking to some gym owners on a young couple owned a gym on Laura Ingram's show. And here's what DeSantis had to say.
DeSantis, it sounds like Broward is like thumbing their nose at you. You've been very pro-reopening, getting rid of these mandates. What the heck's going on here? And what can you do?
Well, it's a total overreach, Laura. This is exactly what we ordered against last summer, many, many months ago. And so I was actually just recently briefed on this case. And we looked at it. And so I'm glad you have Mike and Jillian on. And I'm also glad to be on to be able to say that effective tomorrow morning, I'm going to sign a reprieve under my constitutional authority. So that'll delay the case for 60 days against both of them. And then when our clemency board meets in the coming weeks, we'll issue pardons not only for Mike and Jillian, but for any Floridian that may have outstanding infractions for things like masks and social distancing. The fact is, It's not even right to be wearing masks when you're exercising. The World Health Organization advises against it. It's not healthy for people to be doing that in the first place. So it was a bad restriction. But these things with health should be advisory. They should not be punitive. And so we're happy to use our constitutional authority. I think they've been treated poorly. And fortunately, they got a governor that cares.
What are the chances Newsom's going to pardon Tin Horn Flats?
Well, don't be surprised if he does something. I mean, the recall there's never been such a brain freeze as I've ever seen on any politician as the recall qualifying for the ballot has been with this guy. He's given away money. He's given away free checks. He's opening it up. Yesterday he didn't know what to do. In the last 2 days, mind you, our brilliant Governor Newsom has waffled 4 times on masks, 4 times. 2 days ago, maybe it's sometime mid-June. CDC comes out and says, if you're vaccinated, this is idiocy, basically, unless you're inside in a large gathering. And so they say no more masks. Now he doesn't know what to do. So he's sitting around there because he wants to deflate the recall. So much of this was theater. And it's so frustrating. And the reason I'm so frustrated about this is, look, you don't have any idea until you see the number of people who have told me stories, who reach out to the office who stop me in the street or call and tell me that they've lost their businesses, everything they've ever worked for decades, because of idiotic mandates and flipping on and off outdoor dining and things like that. Why am I fixated on that? I'm fixated on that because you've destroyed people's livelihoods. The judicial branch abdicated their responsibility. The executive branch, frankly, Gavin Newsom, we're developing quite a record that he fired Sonia Angel, who was the then state health officer, because she wouldn't go along with this nonsense. And he wanted to, for political reasons, he wanted to shut down the state. He had other motivations. And at the end of the day, one of these cases that we've got pending is going to get to trial. And at the end of the day, somebody's going to see just how hoodwinked Californians were and what massive damage this guy did to California. And I don't care if you're opening up the Fort Knox to give everybody a check to basically have retrograde amnesia. It's frankly absurd. And by the way, it isn't, I just want to check one more box. It is not all QAnon right-wingers who think this guy has got to go. I am, as I proclaimed many a times, as progressive, almost to the point of being a lefty, a psycho lefty, that there are many Democratic donors like myself who can hold the thought in their head that just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean that you suspend the Constitution, and we have to polarize everything.
Well, I was thinking of you, and we'll get to breaking news on the Chauvin trial as well, and predictions have come to fruition. But quickly, I was thinking of you because the CDC recently sort of got busted for taking marching orders from the teachers' unions, which we all kind of suspected all along. The teachers' unions, huge donors, they were in the ear of the CDC. Now, this is a scary precedent for me. I want the CDC to be an independent sanctioning body who is crunching data and telling us what is safe and what is not safe, not announcing schools can open and then have the teachers unions send out a harshly worded email and then double back and explain that schools can't be open now when no data's come in to suggest otherwise. This is simply being controlled by the teachers unions. So this has come to fruition, and the explanation from what's her name? Lewinsky? Not Lewinsky. From the CDC. Rochelle Walensky. Rochelle Walensky. All right. Her explanation, and this is where I channeled my inner Mark Garagos and screamed at the TV set. Her explanation is that they take input from many of the businesses in order to shape guidance. They welcome the input from the business. So they welcome the input from the teachers union saying we should all stay home and get paid for not going in, and schools should be shut down and your kids should rot at home. What about the input for the restaurateurs? Did you consider any of that, you wacky bitch? How much input did you take from the people whose businesses were dying on the vine when you were saying it was unsafe to eat outside? Did you listen to them? Did you take their input? How about Disneyland, one of the biggest employers in California? Did you welcome their input? I didn't hear that part of it.
You want to know what happened? I have no inside information. But if you take a look at a timeline, Gavin Newsom appointed Bob Iger, the head of Disney, on his special committee. And after they would not allow in California Disneyland to open, whereas Florida allowed Disney World to open, Iger resigned. He didn't say why, but I've got a pretty good guess. And by the way, I'm going to say it one more time, November 25th, when Los Angeles locked down hard and closed outdoor dining, they, within weeks, became the epicenter of COVID in the world, before India, the world. And December 5th, when California as the state followed suit, 6 weeks later, they became the epicenter of the world. And when miraculously we opened back up again, when the recall got close to the number of signatures that we needed, and nobody could figure out. I remember in real time, let's go back and take a look. People said, well, the numbers don't justify this. Why are we opening up? The only kind of causal correlation you could find is the recall numbers. And guess what happened? They dropped by within 6 weeks precipitously to where California is one of the lowest, if not the lowest anywhere. Now, what do people want to say? Oh, it's vaccinations. Really?
Well,
just correlate, take some. And this goes back to what I've been saying all along. If we had had some people who had decided to enforce the Constitution and had allowed us to cross-examine in real time some of these experts so that we could have seen that there was no evidence that the emperor had no clothes, we never would have been here. And that's why I'm so angry at the judicial branch, because they are a co-equal branch of our constitutional government. And other than the U.S. Supreme Court, in a very divided sense, the state courts haven't done it. The district courts in California haven't done it. The Ninth Circuit hasn't done it. It took the U.S. Supreme Court not once, not twice, not 3 times, 5 times reversing California-based courts. And it's astonishing to me that that's where we have come.
All right, I'm going to tease one of Mark's predictions from the last full episode. We'll play you that in a second. We'll get in the Chauvin trial nuts and bolts as well. First, I'll tell you about Geico. Do you own? Do you rent your home? Well, you do one or the other, right? And then there's your automotive policy. You want to get your bundle going at Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners and renters insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around the house. Go to geico.com, get a quote, see just how much you could be saving when you get your bundle working at Geico. That's at geico.com. All right, we will play you Mark's prediction from a week ago and vis-a-vis the Chauvin trial. Here we go.
I think the feds are going to end up indicting all 4 officers very soon. And then they'll just kick this state can down the road.
So what happened recently?
That's exactly what happened. So they did indict all 4 officers, and the judge in the state court case, Judge Cahill, just kicked the trial that was set in August for the remaining 3 officers into 2022 so that the feds can go first. And let me tell you why. That to me was obvious. First of all, judges, and I don't know Judge Cahill. I've kind of grown to like him. They use some of these things that they never admit it, but as a practical matter, it's calendar management. Why does he want to try? It's kind of an observation of the human condition. Why is he going to want to have those 3 officers on trial in his court when he can ship it over to the feds? And why would he want to do that? Because in the federal court, they have now indicted Chauvin for the 2017 incident where he did a almost scarily similar move on this younger kid, who I always forget, but I think he was a minor.
17 years old.
How old?
17.
So what's going to happen in that case now in federal court? Because that's part of the indictment. The other 3 officers are going to cross-examine vigorously, is my prediction, that chief of police in Minnesota who was lionized during the Chauvin trial in the state court. But I have called bullshit on that because he put Chauvin on the streets as a training officer after that 2017 incident that the feds have now indicted Chauvin on. So if you're the lawyer for those 2 officers who are being trained by Chauvin, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to ask the chief, really? You don't tolerate this stuff, yet you had my client trained by a guy who they're now have indicted for his 2017 incident. That's a training officer, really? You want to go there and pretend how progressive you are and how much you don't tolerate these things? The feds just indicted this officer and basically your judgment and as a police chief. So I think these the federal indictment, frankly, for the other officers is incredibly helpful to at least two of the three. And there is an argument that after they are either acquitted or convicted in federal court, that the state court can't prosecute them. So the Judge Cahill may be thinking, let the feds deal with this, and then I can just bar it and claim it's double jeopardy. Because it's, even though the feds can prosecute after an acquittal or a conviction, in most states it doesn't go the other way. You saw that recently with Manafort, whose state court case was dismissed after his conviction in the federal court.
Would the feds be involved with this? Especially the other three officers. Would the feds be involved with the other three officers if this wasn't such a high-profile case?
Probably not. And there's probably, there used to be more aggressive use by the Department of Justice on policing and everything else. But, it's been a revolution in the criminal justice system. But at the same time, that revolution is kind of honored in the breach. And I mean it by this. There's such Gascon is a perfect example. Gascon gets elected in the DA in LA County. Larry Krasner gets elected, the progressive DA in Philadelphia. Larry Krasner is being primaried right now and is in the fight for his life. Gascon is under a recall effort. They get elected on reforming the criminal justice system. But as soon as they start taking steps that kind of touch the third rail, if you will, of tough on crime, there is a backlash. So there is a societal schizophrenia about criminal justice reform. The minute you say, I'm not going to seek the death penalty, and then there's a heinous crime, and you don't seek the death penalty, you get a monstrous backlash. You've seen in Georgia, where I think it's Macon County, Gary can correct me, but that woman was elected on a no death penalty pledge. And then as soon as there's a crime that strikes a chord, she's going to seek the death penalty. We are schizophrenic when it comes to criminal justice. We have been for our entire history in jurisprudence. But the fact is, if you take a sober look at some of these things, you realize that as somebody who has grown up literally in the criminal justice system, that the system is irretrievably broken and needs some different kinds of thoughts. And when you have those thoughts, people reflexively react against it.
Back to the Chauvin case, I had heard a story that sounded quite powerful, but it hasn't been substantiated, I don't believe, about the coroner and an outside coroner, maybe from D.C., maybe a second one from New York, I cannot recall, sort of taking the initial findings of the Minneapolis or Minnesota coroner who found that George Floyd wasn't killed by lack of air in the airway or, trachea sorry.
Yeah, the allegation is that the coroner in the case originally did not think that neck compression was a factor in Floyd's death. He was pressured into including it after speaking with former Washington, D.C. medical examiner Roger Mitchell twice. And Mitchell also testified in the case, after the report was done.
So the allegation is there was some conversations between the D.C. coroner and the Minneapolis coroner, and the conversations went from the D.C. guy, this is not going to be good if you don't modify this, or you're going to end up on the wrong side of history, or some version of that. I don't know if it's happened yet, but if that in fact is true, that's quite a big deal for the defense, is it not?
One of the things that's great sometimes about these high-profile cases, when you look at specific so-called experts, is it shines a great light onto what I would call, not me, but it's a junk science, going back to our COVID thing, so-called experts. It has been a problem since time immemorial that there has been a symbiotic relationship between pathologists / coroners and law enforcement. The detective will go and will kind of guide, in many cases, the coroner to come to a certain conclusion that fits the investigative narrative. There's junk science like arson. We've convicted countless people on idiotic theories of arson, specifically in Texas, that it had to unwind convictions later on. There's junk science about virtual. I mean, I can't tell you how many times shaken baby syndrome has now been basically invalidated. Doesn't help all the people who are convicted based on kind of junk science. That's one of the reasons I get so heated about COVID, why now it does not surprise me in the least that the medical examiner was pressured, because a lot of this is not science. A lot of this is tailoring conclusions to what the result they want. And that is greatly, to me at least, scary, but it's been a problem for forever. I mean, remember, I was thinking of another area, bite mark evidence, which was just a crock of shit.
How about silicone breast implants? That turned out to be a crock of shit.
You can go through all of these things. You get these people who are kind of co-opted for whatever particular reasons, whether it's law enforcement, whether they're on the payroll of the industry. Well, nicotine, tobacco. There's a lot of that stuff was for decades was manipulated. Sugar versus fat. I mean, there's a whole. Vinny could talk about that forever in the manipulation by the various industries.
There was a Twinkie defense famously for the guy who shot Harvey Milk, I think.
Right.
So now for you, if you are Chauvin's defense team and you hear that there may have been some pressure put on the coroner to revise his report from somebody from a different city who was explaining it's not going to go well for you if you stick with that report, is that a big deal? Are you putting everyone on that?
If the defense could show that the prosecution knew that, and presumably they did because they called the witness, and they didn't disclose it, a la the carbon monoxide testing, that could be a very big deal. His biggest hurdle, though, is Chauvin, not the other three officers. You got to separate them out because Chauvin's already been convicted, and now his case is he's going to go deal with the feds. He's got to, if he ever wants to see the light of day, he's going to need to win the federal case. If he doesn't win the federal case, I've said it before, I'll say it again, the likelihood of him getting out is slim and none. And it's complicated by the fact that where before there may have been some unity of interest between the four defendants, that I think the 2017 was a good wedge. Indicting him on the 2017 incident is a wedge that will allow the lawyers for the other three to run right over him.
Hey, Gary, there's more specifics to the story we're just talking about where they have some actual alleged verbiage that went back and forth from the D.C. coroner to the Minneapolis or Minnesota coroner, but I cannot remember where it is. Maybe you can find it somewhere. All right, so are we good with Chauvin for now? You want to move on?
Yeah, I am. Going back to Ron DeSantis and the pardons, and I was thinking there's another thing that Ron DeSantis, in fact, Gary and I talked about it yesterday or the day before yesterday when this drops, and I saw that all of a sudden MSNBC was doing a long thing about it last night. There is a provision in the Florida Constitution. Generally, extradition is ministerial. And why are we talking about extradition? Besides Harvey Weinstein, which we talked about episode after episode, there is now a lot of chatter about Donald Trump, the former president, being indicted by the Manhattan DA. And they're talking about if he is at Mar-a-Lago, what would Ron DeSantis do? And people are saying, well, extradition is normally ministerial. There is a provision in the Florida Constitution that would give Ron DeSantis the ability to kind of drill down on the extradition and the request for extradition which is normally just, is this the guy and is it a valid indictment? This gives him more ability to go behind the indictment, so to speak, legally. And that is interesting, not the least of which because apparently Trump is either headed or is already in New Jersey to his club there, where he would not have a seemingly favorable reception by the governor of New Jersey, who's a Democrat. But if he were at Mar-a-Lago when he is indicted, would Ron DeSantis go out of his way to hold up or tie up the extradition? Can you imagine that? We'd have to do daily beyond reasonable doubts.
You'd have to. If you're Ron DeSantis, it appears to me, and there's another Ron DeSantis story where they were trying to do this hit piece on him because one of his tech people in COVID turned into a whistleblower and started saying that they were underreporting deaths, and the media was calling her a whistleblower. She turned out to get arrested for hacking into the computers or some version of that, but it was much ado about nothing. But I think when Cuomo was getting in deep poo-poo for underreporting and sending, seniors back to the facilities, of course the news organizations had to snap into action and figure out that DeSantis was underreporting as well. But it turned out to be a non-story. And I think the computer girl got arrested.
Her house got raided at gunpoint.
By the way, or she says at gunpoint. But my point is this. DeSantis is making a move toward the presidency, or at least he wants to be a nominee.
You can tell also he's losing weight. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
He's getting progressively leaner as his profile rises.
That's right. It'll be President Karen Carpenter by the time he hits the Oval Office. So he's getting slim, and he's all over the news, and he's doing that. The news is also gearing up to see what they can do about him. So you're going to see some more hit pieces and things like that. I do not know why NBC or MSNBC looks at it as their job to try to take someone down proactively before they're nominated. But okay, somehow that's what it's come down to. But I think DeSantis is going to have to think long and hard about the implications of taking Trump and, going full Roman Polanski with him and letting him live in France, or essentially Florida, or the extradition stuff, and how it would affect his nomination and his future as a possible candidate.
Well, what about this? It has been floated that if he cannot in fact get a presidential nomination, would like to be the
vice
VP.
president. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, but think about this, play it out. If Trump gets indicted and DeSantis kind of keeps him on home arrest at Mar-a-Lago by not granting the extradition, then Trump can't go around having rallies outside the state of Florida, and it gives DeSantis kind of a free rein or pathway to the presidential nomination. So there's a diabolical Machiavellian theory to the whole thing as well.
I got to tell you, I don't want to go too Orwellian here, but as long as we love conspiracy. As long as we're going conspiracy theories, here would be my prediction.
Okay.
Biden doesn't look like he's going to make it the full term. He just doesn't. He's having difficulties. And I do not know. I mean, he's 100 days in and he's on the decline. I don't know where he would be 2.5 years from now. My prediction, my conspiracy theory is if Biden has to take I'm not saying he dies, but he just might take a medical leave. You know what I mean? And Kamala Harris takes charge, and DeSantis takes Trump and puts him on home confinement in Mar-a-Lago. I think Kamala Harris calls out SEAL Team 6 to go get him and bring him into Manhattan. That was my prediction.
Well, most of our people are too young to remember this. What was the name? It was during Janet Reno. and it was the little kid and from Cuba and the
Ileana Gomez.
Ileana Gomez. You're right. Yeah.
Gonzalez.
Yeah, Gonzalez. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'd have that would be the DOJ again. You could have so much fun with this conspiracy theory. And by the way, for those of you whose heads are exploding, remember, we're still found under the comedy podcast. So chill out.
Well, I don't, look, the way things are going now, if you fast forwarded 3 years, this isn't off the table.
Trust me, 4 years ago, if we were to talk, if somebody saw what we're talking about now, 4 years ago, they probably would have said we have a doubt as to the competency of either one of us, or we'd declare a 5150 hold.
All right. Any more on that Chauvin story with the coroners that you were able to summon up?
Yeah, we can tease that for Tuesday because I've got a hard out here in a couple of minutes. I'm actually dealing with my day job today, if you can believe it. I'm sitting here doing a cross-examination virtually 3,000 miles away.
All right. Well, Mark, if you got to hop back on the Zoom and cross, I can take care of our last piece of business here if you want.
I would appreciate that. Bye, you guys. I miss you.
Bye, Mark. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Yeah, Gary, is there, because I heard more about that story than what was in what you had, but I can't recall where I heard it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few quotes here that are specifically out of the report. The report said that the cause of death was, quote, cardiopulmonary arrest, complicating law enforcement subdue restraint, and neck compression, which they're alleging the last part there was coerced. And there's a response from the prosecutor saying the bizarre allegations offered in support of the motion are false and wrong, and we intend to file a complete response. And this all comes out of a motion that was filed by Officer Thao, who is one of the 3 other officers. So his attorneys are filing this motion and alleging this.
Somewhere there is a transcript of what the coroner from D.C. said, the threat.
Okay.
That I'm curious about. And it's probably alleged, but it came from somewhere that he said something to the effect that this is not going to be, history will not be kind to you, or you're going to have a real difficult time if you don't amend that report, that coroner's report from Minneapolis. All right, let me tell you about Audible. Leading provider of spoken word entertainment, largest selection of audiobooks, bestsellers, celebrity memoirs, languages, business, wellness, motivation, and more. Audible Plus, full access to thousands and thousands of popular audiobooks, original entertainment, and podcasts, including ad-free versions of Audible originals like Words Plus Music. Just download the app. It's free. And install on your smartphone or tablet. Listen across devices without losing a spot. Mistrial, that's Garrigus' book, I think worded by Awesome Dawson. You got any one of my books is up there as well. Listen to the audio, man. New members can try Audible for 30 days and 30 days on them. Audible. We'll let you try it out for 30 days. Visit audible.com/RD or text RD to 500-500. That's audible.com/RD or text RD to 500-500. Check it out for free.
All right. Dr. Mitchell, who is the former DC medical examiner, was speaking to Dr. Baker, who is the medical officer in question for the report. Mitchell is alleged by Thao's legal team to have said the following to Baker in a subsequent conversation. Quote, "You don't want to be the medical examiner who tells everyone they didn't see what they saw. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room and be wrong. Said there was a way to articulate the cause and manner of death that ensures you are telling the truth about what you are observing and via all of the investigation. Mitchell said neck compression has to be in the diagnosis."
If that is true, or he has a record of that, I'm wondering if he does have a recording or it's an email or text or whatever.
I believe if they had that, it would have been in the motion.
It's very specific to just kind of go off of memory. But anyway, if he can prove that that was done. I feel like that's a pretty big, that's cause for mistrial right there. At least that's what it feels like to me.
Absolutely. That would be monumental.
I think it would. So we'll follow that case. All right. Let's see. A week from today, May 22nd, Jam in the Van, Los Angeles, doing a live pod there. We're all going to be there. And then Golden, Colorado, 18th and 19th at Buffalo Rose. And then July 3rd, Anchorage, Alaska at Coots. And you can go to adamcroll.com for all the live shows. And then you can check out our YouTube stuff. Watch all the stand-up there for free, youtube.com. There's /Adam Carolla if you want to watch stand-up. You want to watch Reasonable Doubt. It's youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast. And if you want to watch all our free stuff on our Pluto TV channel, all our chassis racing stuff, you can go to channel 687. So, until next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garagos saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.